Hello, everyone. This is Power Pantaloons Podcast. I'm Tanya, your holistic wellness cancer guide, and today we have Jenna Wilson with us. Welcome, Jenna.
Hi, thank you.
You want to tell us a little about what you do?
I would be happy to. So, for the last 15 years, I've been working with new families as a doula and a licensed midwife. And I worked with a busy group practice in California for almost 10 years, families having home births and our town's first and only freestanding birth center. So, attending out of hospital births.
I
Yeah.
have
And
never heard of one of those. That's
oh,
awesome.
yeah, because it was a pretty small city with a lot of kind of rural areas in the outskirts. And some people just wanted to be a little closer to the hospital. So rather than staying home, they would come to us, which was essentially like our home. Instead of theirs. So same kind of clinical setup as what we would bring to home, just geographically different.
That's amazing. Like that's
Yeah,
really like it never even occurred to me. Like that's such an amazing service. So it's homey with some clinical and it's not that sterile hospital room.
yeah,
I could see how that's
exactly.
appealing.
Yeah, happy medium. Yeah, because there ended up being only one hospital still attending births in that town. So it was either home or the one hospital. There was a smaller hospital that had shut down its labor ward. So a third option is almost always a really good thing to consider. And we can talk more about that because that's kind of one of my like power platforms, so to speak, because what I'm doing now, so I've transitioned out of clinical care for now for quite a few reasons. But what I'm doing now is weaving my birth experience with some personal as well as formal and professional training as an intuitive coach and a spiritual guide. And so I'm working with families in that we call it like the childbearing year. So even from preconception through pregnancy, through postpartum, and really helping them kind of take control of their new branch of the family tree. So recognizing it as a really potent opportunity for learning and for transformation. It's naturally so transformational. So my work is to really just bring some deeper layers of awareness and intention to that transformation so that families can, number one, feel well supported, feel informed, and then really have tools for coping with stress, um, and kind of moving forward with their family foundation in a way that feels really true to their like heart and soul and not like overly informed by how they were raised or how their parents did it or how society says you're supposed to do it. So really honing in on that authentic heart and helping parents move from that place.
That's absolutely fantastic. So for what I do, so mindset support and alternative wellness modalities, you are absolutely hitting on all three of them in different ways. But it
Exactly.
seems to me like you're creating an intentional support system. And I think that that is absolutely key in any new endeavor, right? Whether it's a cancer journey or a new birth, having your immediate group around you in alignment with your intentions, what you're working on is super important for the mindset, the little environment that you're building, having
Exactly.
everybody, yeah, be on the same page, as it were, and adding like a spiritual intentionality to the new family member. I like how you put it, the new branch on the family tree. I think that's really cool. And setting up like intentions, like before you start something, you should have an intention for it. Like you should. So I think that's really kind of cool. A lot, I don't think a lot of people do that other than it's my intention to have a child, but like
Right.
take the time to to go deeper and figure out why, right? Like what are the reasons for that other than, growing the family. I could see how I could see how that would be really unique. And and I think more people should do that. Like instead of you're expected to have children, like sit down and think about it and not have children if you don't want to have children, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually in a Facebook group with other kind of like healing practitioners, and there's someone in there whose niche is all about people who are choosing whether or not to have a child. Um, and I think it's so there's support like right there, even in the choice point.
Yeah.
And my intention is really to kind of meet people that are already at that point, either already pregnant or knowing that they want to conceive. And so it's less about like the why and more about the how.
Yeah.
So like even taking inventory of like your own parenting like experience, like how you were parented, and like I really liked this and really didn't like that, or maybe a little more of this and less of that. So thinking about those patterns, everyone grew up with some sort of pattern, whether it's healthy attachment, anxious attachment, uh like a mindset of scarcity based on ancestors growing up in the potato famine. Hello.
Yeah.
Might I suggest that that's part of my ancestral pattern? And so part of my work is kind of looking at even those angles from an informational kind of like three-dimensional perspective, but then also using these tools like kind of connecting with higher self, accessing information from like what my teacher calls ascended masters, so kind of spirits and guides who are available to support and help us. And really like the amount of information available about anything that's happening is so much more than, well, what does Google say?
Yeah.
So I kind of like to play around with this idea of the spiritual kind of energy work that I do. It's like a higher dimensional Google. So I have a practice of like kind of connecting with my higher self and inviting information from guides and using that as another perspective as well. And some of my clients have had profound
Yeah.
shifts with very short, simple, energetic
Yeah. Yeah.
processes. Yeah.
Yeah. Accessing the ancestors or the Akashic records or whatever you would like to
Yeah.
call them.
Exactly.
Um,
So many names for it. Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, absolutely. Like your innate cellular wisdom, because
Yeah.
it it's there. Like you just have to figure out how to unlock it. And
Yeah.
there are absolutely processes for that, little meditations, you can find guides, just yeah, absolutely. And learning from your family patterns and your family traumas can help you break some of those generational curses. I remember vividly saying to my mom, when I have kids, won't treat them like I don't remember what about, obviously, but I know that
Mm,
thing, right? Like, and I hear kids do it all the time. I,
yeah.
like my kids say it to me all the And so, it makes me think, all right, well, am I being wrong here? Like it
Right.
makes me sit back and analyze the situation. And I'm like, no, I'm good. They just don't like the consequences to their inactions. So
Sure. That is totally fair. And I'm so glad you said that too about like, am I doing something wrong? Because it can be really kind of tender and tricky to look back at the choices our parents made. It can bring up that feeling like they did something wrong or we wished that they had done something different. And so I hold such a safe container. I'm really focused on compassion with understanding why people do the things they do,
yeah,
and knowing that everyone is doing the best with what they have at that moment.
yep,
And then it's naming like the two sides of evolution. It's like, yay, we get to do things better. And sometimes it's a little hard to look back and be like, they could have done it better. But now it's my choice to move forward in a way with like advocacy, like you said, kind of being able to break those patterns a little bit. We can't break a pattern if we don't see it and don't start to understand it a little bit.
yeah. Obviously I'm not perfect, and I've definitely not made the best choices, or used the best words, but I'm willing to acknowledge when I'm in the wrong, and I'm willing to apologize and try to do better in the future. So like I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. And you know what? That is somewhat revolutionary in it as a parent. Um, like I follow a lot of kind of like psychology accounts and I'm getting my PhDIY in family psychology on Instagram.
Talk for me.
But right, but there's so much out there that is speaking to kind of like the revolutionary way that people are parenting these days, and it does involve recognizing when we're wrong, apologizing, like emotional safety is revolutionary.
Yeah,
Like
and
we are in the emotional revolution. It's not the industrial revolution because now we're past that kind of like, developmental stage as humans of like survival. So now it's like that next level of um, evolution is the emotional intelligence. So it's a really exciting time. And I feel really excited to be kind of like in this niche and working with people in that way.
yeah, may you live in interesting times. It's such a lovely little curse that you inflict on people. Make it less interesting. I mean, the last couple of decades have been very interesting. Um,
Interesting is an interesting choice of words for it.
yes. I do really feel a global conscious shifting occurring, and
Yeah.
that's exciting to me. I see a lot more people setting boundaries and not putting up with bad behaviors, and I think that's lovely. Like it causes conflict, obviously, when somebody is overstepping a boundary or a perceived boundary, and sometimes the conversation goes back and forth is ugly. But as long as you keep working through it to get to a mutual understanding, it's wonderful. And unfortunately, sometimes that does not happen. Did you freeze? Did I lose you? So we were talking about boundaries and how sometimes when people display boundaries and discussions ensue over those boundaries, sometimes there isn't a mutual understanding, and that's sad. But you could always revisit that at a later time. But I think it's really wonderful when you exhibit a boundary and the other person takes a step back to like think about what you're saying and actually acknowledge it and respect it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I have been presented with several opportunities to recognize boundaries. Like, just kind of coincidentally, several people in my life have, it kind of was like a nanny job and a friend who actually decided to not be friends anymore, and um just these couple different things where I've been presented with the opportunities to kind of like really assess what's true for me, while also like totally acknowledging what's true for them. Like, of course, it was very hurtful when this friend decided not to be friends anymore. Um, and actually, as time has gone on, I've seen more and more the wisdom in her choice um, to step away. And it's kind of opened up this space for new things to flourish in both her and my life. I have stalked her a little bit on, not really, but when she posts stuff, I read
You
it
see
and
it.
she's
Yeah.
got great stuff going on, and I'm happy for her about that. Um, but yeah, it takes, like, I actually feel like that my ability to just kind of like recognize, it's like a namaste, like the wisdom in me sees the wisdom and honors the wisdom in you. That's kind of a result of the spiritual practices that I've been working on and that I do with people, is like, I am a whole person on my own. Yes, I'm learning and growing. So much compassion for those kind of like messy human moments and everything. Like, that's one of my other kind of like mindset main pillars, is everything is an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I find it interesting that when you start setting boundaries, people see themselves out because they don't want to respect those boundaries. But like it's a little telling that they're not prepared to respect
exactly.
those boundaries. And all right, well, okay,
Exactly.
well then I wish you well. Goodbye.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, thank you very much for letting me know your boundary.
Yes, exactly. And you never know if they will eventually realign with your energies or not. You just have to
Exactly.
just whatever. Do your
Yeah.
best. Some people are here for a season, some people are here for a lifetime, some people are here for a dinner, and then, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and you never know exactly what it is you're supposed to learn from them, until much later. Sometimes when you're reflecting back on it, you can see what the wisdom was,
Right. Yep.
or sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just never know.
Yeah. Maybe 4 lifetimes from now, we might, it might click.
Maybe then, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the intuitive side.
Yeah. So I've always been a type of person that kind of sees more than the three-dimensional life. Um, I remember I was probably like 9. My mom went to Ireland for 2 weeks, and I made a little potion with like dirt from outside of our house. There was maybe an ant or two sacrificed for the cause, and water, and that was like my come home safe potion.
Yeah.
Um, who knows where that came from? I was 9 and just whatever, but that's kind of like one of my earliest examples of yeah, just that kind of like mindset of something more, something beyond the 10% of the brain that we're said to use in our physical bodies. Um
Imagine what we
and
could do if we unlocked even a little bit of.
Exactly, exactly. And I've been playing with that actually. Like I my life completely changed in the last year. I left that midwifery job. I drove around the country for 10,000 miles in 3 months and I landed in a new community. So I was living in California and then came to Asheville. And that was an intuitive decision. A friend had kind of like planted the seed of curiosity for this area. And then when I knew that I was going to leave California, in all sorts of ways, I even remember like visualizing a map of the United States in front of me. And I was like, where do I go? Where do I go? So sometimes it's visual for me. And I like, it's probably backwards how the camera is, but like for me over here is the East Coast. It's like California, and it just was like boop, like just there was this energetic like visual draw to land here. And so I did and found a house to rent from people that I knew in California, actually. I ran into them an hour outside of Asheville in a tiny town at a random 4th of July potluck. So almost a year ago. Um,
Random.
and random, yeah. And we recognized, I know, right? Random. So those are just kind of, yeah, some examples of how like the listening for me like makes stuff like that happen. I mean, what what else is life except for just kind of like making decisions and seeing what happens? And so for me, there's a really deep listening of kind of like what's being called for from my soul, like leaving a really busy, like a good job where I just had to show up. It was a full flow of clients. I was making more money than I needed every month. So I was able to like save up for the trip and kind of like cushion that transition. But it was not a logical decision to leave that job. I mean, that was a career. I could have done that for the next 20 years,
Yeah.
but it would have crushed my soul.
Yeah. I, intuition is a strong thing, and learning to listen to what your body is telling you is super important. Like I know I've discussed this before, but I want to just reiterate it. When you know something's going on, you need to acknowledge it. My cancer wasn't found in my blood work or any of
Right.
the traditional little like so pap smear and the ultrasounds and the transvaginal ultrasounds and this crazy test where they inflated my uterus with water and then imaged me. All of that came back.
Ouch.
Oh yeah, no, it was not pleasant. I do not
Oh my
recommend.
God.
0 out of 10.
Wow.
Do not. And my gynecologist is like, well, the only thing left that we can do is a DNC. And I'm like, well, let's do that. And she trusted my intuition about my body. And when they took out my uterus, a healthy uterus, you probably know the answer to that. How much does a healthy uterus weigh?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I know it's about the size of a fist or like a small pear.
4 ounces.
4 ounces. That's lighter than I would have thought. I know. I should know that. I will remember that. Thank you, Tanya.
When they took mine out, it was over 10 pounds. Yeah, that's the look, right? And it did not show up in my blood. And it did not show up in all this testing. But I knew there was something going on with my body.
Yeah.
And I honored that and I respected that. And because I did, I'm still here. That's a lot of cancer, 10 pounds of cancer in your body. And they removed it.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in any of my lymph nodes by the grace of God. Like,
Wow.
I just,
Right.
like, if you look at the science, that's just 10 pounds of cancer is the size of my head. Like, it's a bowling ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and that it was localized to just my uterus is nothing short of amazing.
Right. Right. And likely just a matter of time. Like if you
Yep.
hadn't listened, if you hadn't been listened to. So that's a really big thing that I work with parents on too, especially if I'm able to connect with them in pregnancy, is talking about where the authority lies.
Yeah.
And like that power differential. I'm sure you've experienced it. I would imagine almost everyone listening now has experienced the power dynamic of sitting in a doctor's office. Even if they say, like I'm teaching a childbirth education class right now, and multiple people sit in the class and say the appointments are 5 minutes long. They do the thing. Do you have any questions as they're heading out the door? Like, there's this freeze moment. Because it's totally overwhelming. And not to say that anyone should be expected to become an expert in birth or cancer, or like, you don't have to go to medical school to know what's right for your body, and to know how to just create a little more space for the questions. And I mean,
Uh,
it can feel hard enough where like you need a PhD in communication to get the doctor to slow down a little bit. But it can start small, I think.
I, I, that's so much to say about this. You have a right to ask your questions. You have a right to be heard. If your doctor doesn't want to talk to you or doesn't want to do something for you, I, I've been told, well, you just need to lose some weight, and they try to dismiss what I'm talking about. I'm like, listen, I might be a little overweight, but I'm very, very healthy. The only major thing I've ever had is cancer. And they look at me and they assume that I'm diabetic. They assume that I have high blood pressure, and I don't. I'm not on
Yeah.
any prescription pharmaceuticals, and I refuse to do that for as long as possible because I don't think
Yeah.
that for me that's not a thing that I require because I'm
Right.
basically healthy. So when I'm talking to you about something, um, I I absolutely hate the fact that they immediately just tell me to lose some weight. I'm like, honestly, fuck you. Do your job. Like that's
Right.
not doing your job.
Right. Right.
They,
And it's that narrow-minded, like pathologizing that
yes,
misses the deep listening and the deep understanding what people truly need and what's going on.
right. I, and I understand that part of the problem is they don't have the time because the insurance companies will only pay them X for a
It's
specific
a
amount
terrible
of
system. Doctors are not bad people. They are in a
no,
bad system.
yes. And
Absolutely.
so a majority of them will listen to you, but you will get ones that just absolutely won't. And
Yeah.
I could talk about the woes of insurance companies and how that interferes with our medical
I
system.
know
I
you've
think
got an inside view, huh?
yes. I think the entire system needs an overhaul. I think we need to do more East meets West, do mind, body, spirit, and
Absolutely.
because most of the time they're just treating the symptoms and they're not even looking to see what's causing the issue. And
Exactly.
I think that's big pharma driven because obviously because so
Right.
an
Because end of
overhaul,
sentence.
yes, because an
Yeah.
overhaul of the entire thing is necessary. I, 100 years ago, herbalism was accepted practice. There were herbal schools all over the place. That was phased out by a couple of big families, you know.
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
they wanted to control the narrative. And well, look at how well they've controlled it. And they've had
Exactly.
billionaires, and the rest of us are suffering for it. And it just and nobody wants to talk about that.
Right. Right. It's heartbreaking and infuriating.
Yes.
And you only need to look across the pond.
Anywhere else. All you need to do is
Exactly.
look anywhere else.
Right. Well, not anywhere. I think there are
Yes, I
some
know, but
countries, yeah,
but
plenty of places doing it better.
yes, for as rich a country as we are, it's amazing just how poorly we score in education
Exactly.
and
Right.
healthcare.
Maternal mortality.
Oh my gosh, yes, right? Like it, even the maternity leave after the birth. Why is there no paternity leave? Like I know that the mother did
Some
most of the
companies
work.
are doing it a little more these days, but yeah, that also is heartbreaking and infuriating. And I think it's a direct contributing factor to postpartum mood
Depression.
disorders.
Yeah.
Because if you're home with your baby for 6 weeks and you know that at the end of that 6 weeks, you have to go back to work full time, your experience of that postpartum period is going to be oriented towards that transition time of how am I going to work 9 to 5 if this baby is up every hour and a half at night. It is so normal for a baby to be up that much, and it's the when there's no space in life for to meet that normal rhythm is when stress increases, anxiety, depression, for both parents. I mean, it's doesn't take a lot of complex thinking to recognize that that is not a good system.
No, no, it's horrible. But I mean, I could talk about it for hours, but that's not like that's not going to
Me
help us
too. How much
today.
more time do we have?
10 minutes. I'm not,
Okay, great.
not even. But yeah, absolutely. Like this is a conversation that we should be having as a society. Um, often until we come up with solutions that work for both the corporations and the families.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there are
It's
solutions.
right. Again, there's some European countries that really, I mean, I don't know like the insides of um economy and the budget, like national
But they're
budgets
making
and
it
stuff
work.
for
So clearly it
they're
works.
making it work. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So they found a
Yeah. A
solution.
year of paid maternity leave. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like somehow that seems to be working in other places.
yeah. So I mean there are good models that we could model after, but we're choosing not to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big conversation. But
It
we
is.
could put a pin in it and talk about it later. So Jenna,
Sure.
do you have a gift for our audience today?
I do actually. So I created a guide for new parents to give three really basic topics of like understanding um why you might be feeling kind of overwhelmed or anxious about raising a baby and getting through that kind of pregnancy, birth, postpartum period. So the guide names those three different topics and gives some really easy, applicable tools for just kind of claiming a little bit more agency and advocacy over that transformational time and really helping people create their family foundations based on healthy nervous system, connection, and mindfulness.
That sounds great. I will make sure to put it below in the show notes so anybody who would like
Great.
that resource, they can go ahead and download it. I want to thank you very
Exactly.
much for being here with us today and sharing some wisdom. It was a great conversation.
Thank you, Tanya. Very enjoyable.
And bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.